A shocking twist in the Brian Walshe case. The Massachusetts man was rushed to the hospital after being stabbed in jail. We have the update on his condition, and we're breaking down everything we know so far with prison consultant Justin Paperny.
Find an opportunity and you are really out to get someone and it has been planned well and you see the type of crime that he is alleged to have done, that is a problem. So in this case, whether 10 p.m. or 10 a.m., they were out to get him, and he's very fortunate that it wasn't incredibly worse.
Thanks for joining us on Law and Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner. Officials say that the weapon used in the attack was a makeshift blunt instrument. The assault is still under investigation, even with Brian Walshe's murder trial scheduled to start in just a few weeks. According to the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office, deputies responded just before 10 p.m. on Thursday to treat Brian Walshe's stab wounds. No other deputies or officers were injured, but right now, so little is known at this time. Officials are keeping tight-lipped about the lead up to the stabbing while it's under investigation. It's unclear if there was a physical altercation. It's even unclear the identity of the other inmate involved. But here's what else we've learned. After Brian Walshe was taken to the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston, officials say he was conscious and alert. As far as his injuries are concerned, according to NBC Boston, his injury was superficial, and he was returned to the jail later that night. The sheriff's office says they recovered a makeshift blunt instrument, and the other individual involved was subdued by officers. The stabbing remains under investigation. The Walshe murder case has made headlines across the U.S.
Anna was 39 years old and mother of 3 children, 2, 4, and 6.
Anna Walshe vanished without a trace around the New Year's holiday going into 2023. On January 4th of that year, she was reported missing after missing work, something that was unusual for Anna. Brian allegedly told investigators Anna left their home because she was flying to D.C. While detectives confirmed Anna did book a flight for January 3rd of that year, her credit and debit cards hadn't been used since New Year's Day. Her disappearance sparked a huge search with search and rescue teams plus canines. Then just 3 days after being reported missing, investigators got an email. We have the so-called Anna Walshe with us. We had a deal worth $127,000. She messed up. We have her here with us, and if she doesn't pay the money, then she'll never be back. And we know that the police and the FBI are involved. Good luck finding us. The email was sent from the Gmail account Richard Walker 9984. And obviously this was suspicious. But a day after the email was sent, another major twist. Investigators got a search warrant for the Walshes' Cohasset home. That's where they found blood and a bloody knife in the basement. Brian was arrested that same day and charged with misleading a police investigation. He was arraigned the next day. Now, prosecutors say that investigators found no evidence Anna took a rideshare from their home to the airport on January 1st. They allege Brian's statements to police were a clear attempt to delay and mislead the investigation. Even to this day, Anna's body hasn't been found. While Brian wasn't initially charged with murder, that charge came soon after because prosecutors had a lot of evidence, like the horrific searches allegedly made by Brian on the couple's son's iPad.
What I'd like to do now is just describe his actions in the days from January 1st. The defendant indicated on January 1st at 3 p.m. he did some errands, then he went to his mother's house in Swampscott, but got lost because he didn't have his phone. He said he knew he was lost when he saw the pirate ship on Route 1. Defendant stayed 15 minutes, then went to Whole Foods and CVS. Surveillance was checked and he did not enter either of those stores. On January 1st, defendant Googled using his son's iPad. Some of his searches are as follows. Keep in mind that the defendant said he left at 6 a.m. At 4:55 a.m. on January 1st, he searched how long before a body starts to smell. At 4:58 a.m., how to stop a body from decomposing. At 5:20 a.m., he searched how to embalm a body. At 5:47 a.m., 10 ways to dispose of a dead body if you really need to. At 6:25 a.m. on the 1st, how long for someone to be missing to inherit. At 6:34 a.m. on the 1st, can you throw away body parts? At 9:29 a.m., what does formaldehyde do? At 9:34 a.m. on the 1st, how long does DNA last? At 9:59 a.m., can identification be made on partial remains? At 11:34 a.m., dismemberment and the best ways to dispose of a body. At 11:44, how to clean blood from wooden floor. At 11:56 on the 1st, luminol to detect blood. At 1:08, what happens when you put body parts in ammonia? At 1:21 p.m., is it better to throw crime scene clothes away or wash them? Those were on the January 1st. There was also information gained from the defendant's phone, which showed on January 2nd he was at Home Goods in Norwell, where he purchased 3 rugs. There were also more Google searches on January 2nd. At 12:45 p.m., hacksaw best tool to dismember. At 1:10 p.m., can you be charged with murder without a body? At 1:14 p.m., can you identify a body with broken teeth? On January 2nd, following those, the defendant was seen on surveillance at the Home Depot in Rockland. In checking the surveillance, the defendant is observed on a security camera pushing a cart. Items included cleaning products, mops, brushes, tape, towel, a Tyvek suit with boot covers, buckets, goggles, baking soda, a hatchet. He had a face mask and rubber gloves on at the time he was pushing the cart in Home Depot. At 5:32, he was seen at the Derby Street in Hingham, now removing the gloves and the mask. Data from his phone also tracked his whereabouts on January 3rd. Locations were traveled at 4:27 on January 3rd to an apartment complex in Abington. Surveillance shows the defendant's Volvo, as well as a male fitting the defendant's appearance, exit a car near the dumpster. He walks to the dumpster carrying a garbage bag. He's leaning, and it appears to be heavy as he has to heft it into the dumpster. He walks to the dumpster with the garbage bag and leaves it. On 4:48, he hit another complex in Abington, and at 5:10 p.m., cell phone shows records at another apartment in Brockton. Video shows a party consistent with his appearance and his Volvo. Again, he discarded items in the dumpster. On January 3rd, that same day, at 1:02 p.m., he did some more Google searches. What happens to hair on a dead body? At 1:13 p.m., what is the rate of decomposition of a body found in a plastic bag compared to on a surface in the woods? At 1:20 p.m., can baking soda mask or make a body smell good? On January 4th, the following day, the defendant went to Home Goods and TJ Maxx. He purchased towels as well as bath mats and men's clothing. At 4:15 that day on the 4th, he went to Lowe's where he purchased squeegees and a trash can. On January 4th, when Passett police went to the house on the well-being check, officers observed his Volvo with seats down and a plastic liner in the back of the car. The next day, a view of the Volvo showed his seats folded down, floor mats with some dirt, and the carpet appeared to show fresh vacuum streaks. When asked about the liner, the defendant said he threw in the trash. Chemists later analyzed the car, and there was present blood in the car. On January 5th, review of the data from defendant's phone showed his phone traveled at 8 a.m. first to his daycare and then to Swampscott, where his mother resides. The phone traveled to the complex where his mother lives at 9:30 a.m., went for about 5 minutes around the building to the southeast corner. In the southeast corner of that complex is where there was a dumpster. The dumpster was later secured and searched. On January 8th, police and crime scene services searched the house in Passett. They found blood in the basement, a knife with the presence of blood. The knife was damaged. A second knife was also found in that basement. In addition, there was heavy-duty large top plastic liners purchased from that Home Depot trip. As part of the investigation, police checked for activity on honest credit cards, bags, flights, trains. There was no activity since she was last seen on January 1st. Police also tried to track down what happened to the bags that the defendant was seen throwing in the dumpster earlier. This was over in Abington. These bags and what was in them were already picked up and taken to a location for shredding and being incinerated. By the time police located that, they were already destroyed. However, investigators did secure and search the dumpsters from defendant's mother's complex in Swampscott. It was searched at a transfer station in Peabody. Investigators recovered 10 trash bags. Inside the trash bags, many of these items contained stains consistent with blood, infected blood. Among the items secured were towels, rags, slippers, tape, Tyvek suit, gloves, cleaning agents, carpets, rugs, hunter boots, Prada purse, a COVID-19 vaccine card in the name Alana Walshe, a hacksaw, a hatchet, and some cutting shears.
Ever since that 2023 hearing, Brian Walshe has remained behind bars on no bond. Prosecutors shared more details since then, like that Anna had nearly $3 million in life insurance, where her husband was the sole beneficiary. But Brian's defense claims that he didn't need that money. We also learned Anna and Brian's relationship wasn't as picture perfect as it seemed. According to court documents, Anna had an affair with a man in D.C. Investigators did speak with that man, who told them he and Anna dated for several months and were planning on spending that very same New Year's together. Then she disappeared. But he was seemingly ruled out as a suspect. Then there was another twist in the case, when a familiar name from another high-profile Massachusetts case lingered in the Walshe case. Michael Proctor was one of the lead investigators in the Karen Reed case and was also one of the investigators looking into Brian Walshe. Proctor was relieved of duty after sending crude text messages calling Karen Reed a whack job and telling his sister he wished Reed would kill herself. While Proctor claimed his emotions got the better of him, he was relieved of duty after Reed's case ended in a mistrial last summer. But Walsh's defense attorneys are seeking emails and texts from him.
In this case, the federal government and the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office were essentially working together. They were working to investigate a homicide that Norfolk was prosecuting. They were investigating the state police for integrity violations, policy violations, inappropriate conduct, failure to supervise. And so this information has been starting to get turned over to us, and as Mr. Tifton articulated, whether it comes to Bowden or credibility or bias, that's part of what we want to show and what we expect to show. So we believe the material is Rule 14. They have it, ergo we should get it. So I don't think 2E is even necessary yet. If they've indicated they're going to take that road, then that's fine, but that does not negate our argument that it is Rule 14. And the SJC as recent as 2020 has clearly stated that it is in their possession. With respect to the cases they cited in their response, they're relying on Commonwealth versus Bonnet, which was a 2015 case. I don't believe that's on point. Bonnet is a case in which the state district attorney's office was not aware of the identity of a confidential informant. And so it wasn't in their custody. And secondly, they were saying that it was privileged. We have nothing to show that anything in those 3,074 pages are privileged or protected. We don't know. We've pulled it together from pleadings from other cases, responses from the government, just to know that they have it, roughly what it's about, and then several letters between the district attorney's office and the federal government talking about this material, specifically the officers involved. And the reason I can point to, there's a myriad of reasons why it would be relevant, but what we're able to determine is that Trooper Proctor, who was the lead investigator on this case, the moment he stepped foot into investigating Brian Walshe and the disappearance of his wife, he knew he was under federal investigation. And so his bias, his motive, anything or his integrity is forefront for him. So with all those thoughts, when you're considering all of that, I don't know how it's not Rule 14. I don't know how we're not already in possession of this. And so otherwise I rest on the papers. And they talk about Beal, your argument. In Beal, I agree the prosecutor doesn't have a duty to go investigate our case, but they haven't. So we're not asking them to go get something they don't have. And in footnote 4 in Beal, which isn't cited in their brief, it specifically says the government isn't able to simply put their head in the sand if there is something exculpatory. And documents that show that the lead investigator in a homicide case knew he was under federal investigation the moment he stepped foot in the case is certainly...
Isn't it even strong? Well, I'm not making your argument, but wasn't he already under prosecution?
No, Your Honor. Do you mean
So
Mr.
what's the
Walsh, or do you
yes.
mean, no.
What's the timing of his federal indictment?
Do you mean do you mean Trooper Proctor or Mr. Walsh?
I thought you were talking about Mr. Walsh.
No,
that
Mr.
there's
Walsh
bias
is
because
state
he knew that
investigation.
Mr.
Trooper Proctor knew he was under federal investigation.
Federal investigation.
The moment he
I thought you were
stepped
saying there was a bias against your client
No.
because he was under
No.
federal eye.
No, it's Trooper Proctor.
That's an additional bias, by the way.
Right, but we're just focused on that part. But the moment he stepped into this investigation, and bear in mind, the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office, they control homicide investigations. They work with the state police with CPAC. So now the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office knew that Proctor was under federal investigation, specifically for how he investigates supervision, etc. He now is the case officer in this matter while his case is pending. So that's one of the myriad reasons why not only are these documents relevant, they could very well be exculpatory. And under Rule 14, it's not exculpatory, it's material and relevant.
The defense also argued investigators illegally obtained the Google searches used as evidence. But will the Commonwealth be able to use the searches during trial? Well, they will, despite objections from the defense. According to Mass Live, Walsh's defense attorney sought to appeal a decision from a lower court that allowed prosecutors to use the searches as evidence. But a justice from the Supreme Judicial Court denied the defense's appeal. So for now, even while recovering from a jailhouse stabbing, Brian Walshe is still expected to go on trial next month. I'm joined now by prison consultant Justin Paperny. Justin, great to see you, and thanks so much for joining me. What's your reaction to Brian Walshe being stabbed in jail?
Well, it proves, even if you're in a high security prison, if a prisoner has an agenda to hurt someone in a high profile case, many people in prison they have children, they have their sons, their daughters, and they want to take action and they want to hurt someone. So it's very easy to blame the prison, there's no doubt. But when someone they really have an agenda to hurt someone, even in a higher security prison, it can absolutely happen.
And his injury is reportedly superficial, but officials tell us that they recovered a makeshift blunt instrument. Is that just official speak for a shank?
That is correct. You're getting all the prison lingo down. We've done it long enough. You understand all of it. When you work in the kitchen, certain jobs inside of the prison, it's very easy to get creative and make a weapon, a shank. A utensil, something from the kitchen, is enough to injure someone. And even though he's okay, which is good, he can expect this sort of treatment throughout the duration of his journey in prison.
And it didn't look like Brian Walshe was having problems in the jail until this incident. What do you think happened? Do you think that he was just having issues with another inmate? Do you think that maybe the high profile nature of his case maybe rubbed an inmate the wrong way? What are your thoughts on what potentially might have happened there?
Well, it takes time for someone to concoct a scheme to get the weapon and then find the opportunity where they have some isolation to hurt someone. So he hasn't been in prison that long, relatively speaking. So it could actually take that long to carry out an assault or, experience of this degree, so to speak. So it takes time to plan these things, from what I've heard and from what I've read. I did not see that when I was in prison, thankfully.
Yes, that's good. And good that during the time there was pretty safe considering. And when something like this happens, when you're taken to the hospital and then you're later returned to jail, in Brian Walshe's situation, do you think that he was sent to AgSeg, or do you think that he was sent back into general population? Where do you think that he's been housed now? Because officials are keeping pretty tight-lipped on that right now.
If I was a betting person, I'd bet that he's in segregation with many more eyes on him. Prisons, federal and state, have had so many problems with escapes, with injuries. So he's segregated, in my opinion, and that's a harder experience for him because you're isolated 23 hours a day and you feel really confined. At times you don't know if it's day or night. You can shower once or twice a week. You're very disoriented, and it's a much harder experiences. But the prison would say it's for his protection, and he needs to be isolated with more eyes from staff. So I presume he's in total lockdown right now.
And we understand that jail or prison isn't necessarily like a hotel, a suite, a resort, anything like that. But in terms of just security and feeling maybe safe, maybe unsafe, do you think that inmates are a little more vulnerable at nighttime? Because officers say they responded just before 10 p.m. Do you think that there's more room for things like this to happen during late nights? Are you surprised that it happened right before 10 p.m. or around the time that officials tell us? But are you surprised at the time that this happened?
I would say in the evening, it's easier to let your guard down. The weight of the day is behind you. Staff could be a little more lackadaisical, so it could be easier with lights down to seize this opportunity. But we've seen this enough, whether it's 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. If you
Mhm.
find an opportunity and you are really out to get someone and it has been planned well, and you see the type of crime that he is alleged to have done, that is a problem. So in this case, whether 10 p.m. or 10 a.m., they were out to get him, and he's very fortunate that it wasn't incredibly worse, but it doesn't mean there won't be more to come, which is why I presume they're just going to continue to keep him isolated.
And Brian Walsh is expected to go on trial very soon for his wife's murder. In terms of preparing for his trial, preparing for his defense, do you think this stabbing may have shaken him in some types of way? I mean, I can't imagine it didn't, but what are your thoughts on as he's preparing for his defense that maybe the stabbing might not have helped in any type of way?
It's hard to get into the mind of someone who could do something that he is alleged to have done. It's sickening, it's disgusting. And at this point, he has convinced himself somehow, some way that he hasn't done anything wrong. He's the victim. I even see some of the defense attorney's statements. They're really grasping at straws here. So he's probably said to himself, if I plead guilty, I'm getting life in prison. If I get convicted, I'm getting life in prison. Somehow, some way, I have to get lucky. Part of the problem why he could be isolated in prison is not just because of the crime, because of the unwillingness to accept responsibility, right? And also, apparently, what he did after the alleged killing, it's like the doubling and tripling down of really disgusting, terrible decisions. Now, if on the inside he is off-putting to people, he's disrespectful, he's arrogant, he's entitled, he's aloof, he's rude, he's mean, he thinks he's better than, then you have the crime together with some alleged conduct in the prison that compels people to say, we want to make an example out of him.
And do you think his defense attorneys will use this as at their advantage to possibly push the trial back even more? What are your thoughts on how the defense could possibly use this stabbing to work in Brian Walsh's favor?
If they say he's injured and not in a position to prepare properly for trial, certainly you can expect the judge to grant an extension. But if he's able to prepare and responding well according to this injury, then the judge may say you have your attorney-client phone calls and visits. We have a trial upcoming, and we want to be respectful to the victims and the victim's family. We're ongoing. So I suspect unless he's really hurt, trial's going to proceed.
And what do you think these last few years have been like for Brian Walsh? Because to your point, Justin, he is very affluent or came from a very affluent lifestyle, and now he's in jail accused of this very heinous and gruesome crime, which is murdering and dismembering his own wife. But what do you think it's been like, kind of that fall from trajectory for him now that he's sitting in jail awaiting trial for this?
I've spoken with people who've gone from beautiful homes to a minimum security camp, and wow, what an adjustment. So when you go from a beautiful home to a detention center or county jail, it is a massive change or experience. In this case, if convicted, he brought it all on himself. And I presume he didn't consider his conditions in prison, the fact that if convicted, he would spend the rest of his life in prison. But to your question, yes, it is a big shift to be told when you can eat, when you can sleep, when you can visit, what your job is going to be, to continually fear for your life. I was in a measly minimum security camp. There was no violence there. The highest value was boredom. Still prison, but no violence. He's in a position where 24 hours a day, he is at risk. And if he behaves poorly or has this air of arrogance to him, the problems are going to continue. But it is a massive shift. And I presume he didn't consider these things if he allegedly did what he did. How could someone consider these things? He wasn't rational or normal if convicted.
And what do you think it's like for detainees or inmates who are preparing for a murder trial to be? I know we can't necessarily get into their minds or anything like that, but what is it like during the preparation period for inmates who do have to prepare for trial while they are still in custody?
Well, it's much harder than if you were free because even though you're allowed to see lawyers in prison and have phone calls, it's much harder. You don't have the access you would if you were free. I presume he has a pretty good understanding that he's going to be convicted. So there are some people, the evidence is overwhelming. We want to be very careful. Everyone has their right to trial. But there are people who go to trial who say, okay, I am absolutely innocent. I'm going to maintain hope that I'm going to win. Now, even if they lose in some white collar crime cases, it could be 3, 5, 7, 8 years. There is an end. You are getting out at some point. In this case, he knows if convicted, he'll spend the rest of his life in prison. The only upside for him, if convicted, he will probably get transferred to a prison that is a little more comfortable than where he is right now. So there's a little silver lining down the road for him. But for now, the only hope he has is that his lawyers are telling him there's going to be some error, some jurors going to err on the side of you, some police misconduct, like I saw some evidence they access and the government The lawyer said you weren't supposed to see that, some prosecutorial errors, but he has a pretty good idea of what's coming the rest of his life in prison.
And do you see a potential where a jury could really be on his side in this case?
I think jurors are objective. I think they do their job well. So it depends on the evidence, but probably not.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll have to see how they eventually come to their decision when that time eventually comes. Justin, I want to thank you so much for your insight into this case. I really appreciate your time today.
Good to see you.
Great to see you too. Brian Walshe is already serving a 3-year prison sentence for an unrelated charge. Jury selection for his murder trial is expected to begin on October 20th. And of course, Law&Crime plans to stream gavel-to-gavel coverage of his trial. Thanks so much for joining us here on Law&Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner.